Welcome, everybody. This is Teddy, and this is conversation between myself and Stephan in preparation for the Bridges of Meaning conference in Landau, Germany. Me and Stephan, we covered topics of his family tragedy and the road to the Bridges of Meaning community through the roadmaps of Paul van der Klee and Jordan Peterson. And then we discussed the problem with Landau conference for the Bridges of Meaning, why they are problematic, what our hopes and fears with the community. I highly recommend to listen to this video in a higher speed through YouTube. And if you don't know how to do it, there is a cog that you can, or the free buttons, it depends on which device, which you click and then choose the speed of the video. I recommend to listen in the speed of 1.5. It's a free flow conversation, so we actually slow and stop from time to time to think, and it's much more pleasant to hear when they are going faster. So enjoy listening, and thank you.
So is that a USB? That's not a USB mic. That's an XLR mic.
It's
onto a USB.
It's actually
port.
both. So it's
okay.
XLR and a USB, and I'm using the USB
figure.
because I don't want to connect this bad boy. I don't want to connect.
Focusrite.
Yeah. I don't want to connect it and to have like a fat cable, and the quality is good enough, so I'm just using the USB. I had a dream many years ago, probably 10 years ago. I started to listen to Joe Rogan at the beginning of the teens, 2010 at 11, probably something around there, when Joe Rogan was still small. 120 episodes, that's when I started. And I had a wish to start a podcast, and I was thinking about different approaches and ideas, but probably I was too nervous to actually execute it and to find guests and be comfortable with speaking in microphone and those small details of confidence that you need before you actually go on a certain profession or a certain thing. So I had that dream, and the other one was I just started university, I studied philosophy, and I thought, I can do something like a YouTube over my classes. I think about them out loud, and then I can actually learn better, and maybe people will find it useful. Well, that's too bad I didn't start it, because in 2012 it was a good time to start. But
yeah, I mean, it's never too late to start in the first place. And I mean, technology and software and all that kind of stuff has gotten so much better than 2012 with regards to the possibility of low profile amateur, medium professional podcasting. It's just ridiculous how easy it is today. I remember I had music software in the early 2000s, and I was trying to record an electric guitar to the computer, which was almost impossible without, really bad quality. And today it's okay, you have this USB box, which costs just $1. Yeah, it's nothing. And you plug it in and you have your amps and preamps and all that kind of stuff in the software included. And it's okay, I wish I had that 20 years ago. I wish I had that 10 years ago. So I feel it's a time of great possibilities and opportunities, and the hurdles are so low today for anyone to produce content. The question is, what audience do you want to address?
I don't think it's.
And what's the purpose you want to have with it?
It's a very business-like approach. What kind of audience? What do you want to produce? I think you mean that's basically what a lot of my friends ask me. I say, and my answer is, I don't know. I want to do something like Joe Rogan, to put my attention in the things that I'm interested. And I don't
Well,
care
with
about the
regards to
audience.
conversations, I agree. I agree with regards to conversations and the way, the style that's developed over the Discord and this corner of the internet, which is basically, friendly discussions and intellectual interactions without it's seemingly without a direct purpose, but there's always a purpose behind it, but it emerges usually. It's not there in the first place.
Yeah.
It can be many things and it can change during one conversation. But it's more about, okay, if you want, like I'm currently working on a podcast idea project. It's been there since I think I'm in it for 9 or 10 months now. I have like 60 to 80 pages of script and it's all over the place and I have to, focus on one specific. So I'm still in the preparation of all that, but it's always with the question, why am I doing this? It's okay, and it begins with the fact that ideas have you. I'm very convinced of that by now. So I heard this, I watched this video with Nate Heil and John Vervaeke and Michael Martin about sociology and Goethe. And
Mm-hmm.
at that point, I was kind of triggered because me as a German, having studied German philology and having been in contact with Goethe since grade 7, it was immediately something like, okay, that is something that I can relate to, and that is something I want to dive into. And it's not like it's an obsession, but at times it's very funny because, the post service comes and it's another package, and my son says, "Oh, is that another Goethe?" So, you know, my family realizes that I've been pretty preoccupied with that topic of Goethe, and so by now I'm actually focusing on Goethe's Italian journey and how that relates to the modernity and the meaning crisis and Rousseau. He borrowed heavily from Rousseau, and he's
Just to
he's right at the center of everything that is about European modernity, philosophy, and development in society.
just because I didn't heard correctly, you're talking about Goethe, the one who wrote Faust, or you're talking about?
Exactly. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
okay. I thought
That
maybe
one.
you're talking
Johann
about.
Wolfgang Goethe.
Yeah, okay. I thought you were talking about. I don't know why Girard. In my mind, they sounded the same. When I'm speaking right now, they sounded different. Okay, Stefan,
Oh,
let me.
Girard is great as well.
Yeah,
I've just finished the 4-hour series of CBC about René Girard, and that's
I don't know about it.
astounding.
CBC, the Girard series, yeah, something like
Yeah,
that.
it's a I think 4 or 5 series radio program that's available on YouTube, and it's like, okay, 5 episodes and they not only introduce to René Girard, but it's a long interview with René Girard where he actually explicates all his ideas from mimetic desire, mimetic rivalry, scapegoating, all that kind of stuff, and puts it into a perspective, especially with regards to Christianity and how scapegoating plays itself out in Christ. Um, as the ultimate scapegoat because he's innocent and the crowd doesn't know what it's doing. Literally, it doesn't know what it's doing. That's the whole idea of the scapegoating mechanism. So I found that really, really insightful. And
Mm-hmm.
um, I'm always running risk that once I've had insight into like this idea or this concept, I see it everywhere. So it's really difficult for me to actually grasp these things and not try to apply them into real life and to situations that I see, oh, that's a scapegoating mechanism. Oh, you see, that's the rivalry thing. It's like, okay, let's boil it down. It's fun, but don't overdo it.
I think it's something that happens to a lot of very open people. Like after you learn something, like yeah, I had a few years that everything was somehow connected to Jordan Peterson and a few of his main points, and then like I go after, then I diving more into Peugeot, so everything is like constructed from these small elements. And if you go like in the university, I went deep into Wittgenstein and philosophy of language, and like everything
Hmm.
is constructed from these elements of language and how they play with each other. But I think it's just consequence of open mind and
Yes,
hungry to
probably.
implement it in the
Right,
world and
right.
see how your mental idea about the thing is correlated with the actual reality. And it's like obsession for.
I think that's absolutely right. So I think many, if not most, of the BOM members are very high in openness. And I like did that Jordan Peterson personality test, and I scored I think 98 on openness or something like in the 90s and something like that as well in verbal intellect and that kind of stuff. So that was like, okay, that's pretty easy to explain why I'm doing all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um,
How was
yeah.
you in the neuroticism?
Oh, pretty high.
Pretty high. Okay.
Above standard average of a male.
Above
I'm
standard
I'm
average of a male. Yeah, that
yeah. So
so second, third, something like that.
yeah, right,
Yeah,
exactly. So,
I was the
so
same.
not an extreme, but definitely not. It's I think at least one standard deviation of above the
The
mean
norm.
of male people. So I realized that I'm sort of a neurotic extrovert, which is really funny because extroverts love to get into communicative situations and you know they do this crowd surfing, but once I'm in the situation, I'm like, what am I doing here? Why am I here? I have to get out again. So it's like always this pulling and pushing, you get into that situation. What am I doing here? Want to get out again? Now I confront myself with
Yeah.
that. So
Well,
yeah,
well,
I do have a tendency for anxiety. That's certainly an issue.
yeah. That's I actually want us to talk about it because it sounds similar to the situation I'm in. But I was while I was telling you the story about the podcast and about the equipment and everything, I was there is a certain feeling that always with me since probably I'm a child, which is always well, now it dissipated after probably my 35th year in this earth. Just a small question. As I understand, you more or less my age.
Yeah, I'm
I'm
turning 39.
Okay, I'm 37. Okay, so more or less we're in the same age group. But I when I told you the story about the equipment and the podcast, it's not just then. I always felt most of my life that I'm too late for the party. And I'm too late for starting this. I'm too late. I remember during the 97, I was like something around 12, and my friend got a book about how to program games. And there,
Hmm.
it's like, and like, I was so excited, and like, I was like, looking at it, and it was super simplistic. I was just doing like Pawn games and the invasions from space, the 70s game, and I said like, that's not StarCraft. That's not I don't know. That's not Doom. Like those things are
Right,
so
right,
far away. I will
right.
never catch up. Never. There's no chance in the world that it can happen. So I just never picked up programming. It's like it's the why. Like it's almost useless to start at that point.
It's really funny because I have a similar trajectory. I was like kind of into trying to program starting with basic and C plus and realizing it doesn't work, and I had Java in school and we had Delphi and that kind of stuff, and it just didn't work out, and others were like way ahead of me, and I was like, okay, I missed that opportunity, obviously. And another funny episode is that somewhere around 12 or 13, we had this music teacher, and he used to have these sessions where everyone could bring his music and everyone was listening together. So all of my friends, they brought music that they all listened to, and I had never heard of that, but it was just the mainstream music. It was like Offspring and Metallica and all that kind of stuff. And me was like, okay, I have jazz and I have classic music and I have progressive rock like Genesis and Peter Gabriel because my father was really into Peter Gabriel and that kind of stuff. So you realize, okay, something's weird, something's off. I'm obviously late to the party, as you said. So now today I listen to most of the stuff that my friends used to listen to 20 years ago
Yeah.
because I realized that's actually really my music home base. But at that point, it was like, why am I not in that
In
circle?
that
I'm
circle.
like really outside of the.
Yeah, but it wasn't just the things like consume. It wasn't just that. It was a lot of different feelings about being late with like making friendships or like starting hobbies. That was persistent for many years. Programs and computers was of course this feeling that like you're too late. Now I'm at a point in my life that I understand, oh, I'm not late. I'm
Mhm.
earlier than most of the people. I'm seeing trend happening 10 years before. And I want to tie it back to this neuroticism personality because I think that neurotic personality is the prophetic personality, let's call it, or prophetic
Mhm.
tendencies in a
Mhm.
person, because you are
Yeah.
you are so agitated by the world that you look for threats, and you always try to see the threats as far as you can see them coming towards your way. So I understood that YouTube is huge in 2011. Like that's, but like, yeah, like, and everybody's still thinking that it was idiocy. I started with Joe Rogan quite early. Like that, those kind of trends, those kind of elements are like give me some kind of, I'm seeing a problem that I'm trying to solve. Maybe I cannot say what the problem is exactly is, but I'm looking for the solution for that problem. And usually it's 5 years, sometimes 10 years earlier than my peers.
Yes.
Uh,
Well, I think it relates to the fact that if you're stuck in the past, you're bound to be depressed. If you're stuck in the future, you're bound to be anxious. And anxious-ridden people, their senses, they have a heightened awareness of possibilities, of chances, but also very much of risks and dangers. And that's because the vagus nerve, their polyvagal system, regularly you have this fight, flight, freeze response. And usually we are into the flight or freeze response as anxious people. And you have to try to regulate that. And one part is actually trying to be in the present instead of in the future. And I think that is, at the border of being in the present, but also always focused on the future is where you have this prophetic tendencies, where you realize that something's developing that is relevant today as well as in the future, but you don't know exactly yet why. But you have this intuition, and it's not just an intuition; it's actually wired into your whole system.
yeah, yeah. So you said you're quite well. One deviation about norm in neuroticism. Have you suffered from depression and is the past like, have you suffered from nostalgia? Because I'm suffering from it quite a lot.
Not at all, because my past wasn't very nostalgic. That's one lesson I've learned is
I don't
okay,
think
I
it's an
had
excuse. No, you can always
no,
find
it's
something.
well, it's I'm a divorced child, so my parents got divorced in 1998, 2000, and that was that was a huge break and transformative experience in a negative sense. And it took a lot of years to actually recover from that for me. So I usually don't look back. And it's not that I don't look back because there's too much pain in it. I've worked through that stuff. That's not it. It's just that I don't see any use and purpose in that because I have to look at, okay, what's ahead of me? if I've had a bad relationship with my father in the past, that does not mean that it has to stay that way in the future, especially if I think about my own children wanting to be, connected to their grandfather. I think it's a responsibility to move forward with that. So I don't spend a lot of time looking back. That's one thing. But I do have these sometimes anxiety issues. I had some panic attack at the end of 2019, which was like the worst experience of my whole life. It's like a bad trip. I've never had a trip. I've never taken psychedelics or that kind of thing. But it's like, okay, you're stuck in the darkest possible place without any light and without any noise. It's like really void. I've never experienced that before and after that in my life, but that was like really void, just the pure nothingness. And I was awake and I was lying in bed and my family was next to me, but I felt, really far away, physically disconnected from all of reality, from all of what everything was around me. And I could not see, even though my eyes were open. It was like pitch black, and it's not even black, it's just nothing. So that was really the worst thing I've had. And the strange thing is not that I felt that I was going to die in that moment, but it was like the realization that I'm mortal, which was really obviously we're mortal.
Yeah.
Why is that such an issue? But to me, that was like the next transformative experience, like realizing, okay, in that moment, I'm going to die.
Yeah.
Not now, but death is impending. Suffering is inevitable. So, so and that is part of my answer to your question. You wrote me before we started this conversation. Is how does a married man with 3 children become interested in Jordan Peterson and Paul van der Klee and the like? That panic attack was to me part of my personal meaning crisis because 1.5 years going back, I had a surgery out of nowhere, and that broke my bodily shell,
Yeah.
and that was the first time I really became aware of my vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
And from that moment on, my sensors were, all the time into anxiety mode. Something is happening. I have to look out. Trouble is ahead. So, how do you filter that? My filter system didn't work anymore, and I did not trust the signaling of my body in any sense any longer. I was like completely distrustful of everything that I had known about myself and about my body and about, the medical community and that kind of stuff. So I had to work through that actually. And part of the solution was like I was trying to get back to my roots. So I was brought up as an evangelical. I've been a Christian all my life. I've never thought about anything else. Christ is at the center of everything. That's an obvious statement to me. I don't have to think about that. But I've never, filled it with intellectual depth.
Mm-hmm.
It was more like an experiential, pragmatic position I had about that. And I became interested in the church fathers and started listening to church fathers online on YouTube and comments about that. And so there were some lectures on church fathers, and suddenly there was this YouTube algorithm working out that Bishop Barron talks about some things. And I was like, okay, I don't know Bishop Barron, but maybe he's interesting. And it turns out in that talk he had on Words on Fire, I think is his podcast or his video, and he was talking about this fringe, weird psychologist unknown to me from Canada called Jordan Peterson, and I was like, eh? Why would a Catholic bishop talk about a
Mm-hmm.
Canadian psychologist of all people? So that's when I looked into Jordan Peterson, and I was like immediately hooked by his psychology lectures, not by his biblical series. I only dabbled shortly
Yeah.
into that. I was
Yeah,
like
me as
really
well.
much more into the like psychology stuff, and I binge watched that, and I felt like okay, that's something I have to dive into. So I got his 12 Rules for Life, um, and I read that like really fast and took my pen and scribbled down everything that was interesting to me. And at that point it felt like someone gave me a decent beating.
A
It was
beating.
like Jordan. yeah, Jordan Peterson was like, he was taking me by the shoulders and giving me a beating and saying, wake up, wake up, get serious. You're an adult, grow up, man up. You have a responsibility. And I was like,
Was
oh
it
gosh,
was it different from the of when you had your children? Like because by
that's a
looking
good
at my
question.
friends with kids, I'm not married, I'm not in a relationship, and it's really far away. It always been far away in my life. But when I see, and I love children, but when I see my married people with kids, they I saw the shift of seriousness, that you need to take care of this
Yeah,
small
yeah,
place. And I
yeah.
remember, always remember Louis C.K. telling about his trajectory in the comedy, because he was a mediocre comedian until
Hmm.
he got children. Because and he's telling the story that he came to the comedy clubs, and he was hanging around for many hours and drinking maybe too much. But when he had kids, he was like, okay, I have an hour and a half to come to the club, do my stuff, and go home. And that lack of time make him much more efficient and much more compact in his
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Uh, we had our so it's a long story actually. So we were awaiting a child in 2012, but our first daughter, she had a terminal illness. So she died in week 26, 27.
oh.
So we had to go through a, medically induced abortion, which is the worst experience you could have apart from, premature infant death. It's like the second worst thing
Yeah.
possibly. And we've had actually two families we know. One's our friends. They had a child and they realized, okay, something's weird with this kid. He doesn't connect to them, and actually he died with a premature infant death, which was terrible. But so we had this experience, and that was devastating. And it's like, okay, you're in your late 20s, and the first experience with the child is you're having to bury it. It's like, that's the worst thing you could experience.
Yeah.
But my wife and I, we worked through that, and we realized that God had, he did not harden our hearts, he actually widened our hearts. So that was the realization that we really want to have children, and not just one, but
Hmm.
at least two children. So thank God, basically immediately afterwards, my wife became pregnant again, and we had this wonderful son, whom we named Mattis, which is like uh, the abbreviation of Matthias, which is basically present of God
Hmm.
or gift of God. So he really was that gift. And then at that point, I had two realizations that first of all, I don't have much time. And second of all, I have to take care of someone else.
Hmm.
So I totally agree that as soon as you have one child, you realize, okay, it's not just about you, it's about many things. And additionally, the experience of having lost a child is also something that totally changes your worldview, because for example, you go to work and they debate, small details, and they get into a fuss about that. And you say, well, what's the deal? That is not relevant.
Yeah.
That's not important. It's not of any, importance in your life. But you have to realize that you cannot, say that just because you've had this experience, others realize the same just by you trying to argue with them. It doesn't work out. Everyone has to have his own experience and make his own realizations in life to be at the similar position that I was in. So we knew we wanted to have another child. So we had in 2013 we had our son. In 2016 our daughter was born, and
Which is really
by then,
unusual for a German family. To three kids, it's quite a lot in European
yeah,
standards.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. But I come from a family with I have two siblings, so and my wife only has none. So we're a small family, and we soon realized that family is so important to us, and we are a very small family. And my dad lives in Thailand, and my mother is married again, but my two sisters, they don't have family at all.
Hmm.
So to me, it felt like an intergenerational responsibility
Mm.
to keep this family alive, to keep the tradition alive. Jordan Peterson might say that's about your genetics and,
No, it's not
evolutionary
that just that.
ideas. It's not just that, and it's. I think the whole package was very important to me and my wife.
Are you the
So then,
firstborn in your
yeah,
family? Hmm.
yeah, no, but just by like 10 minutes, I'm a twin.
Oh, okay.
So I have a twin sister, and
Sister.
it's just like, okay, I was the first one, but yeah,
No, but it's
not
still
very
like
not very long.
the male first, like the older brother, the male um, has a certain weight and a certain responsibility, and actually also the way that the parents care for the kids, for the firstborns and then for the later, it's quite different. Yeah, me
Yeah,
and
I mean, that's right. I don't know whether it's because I'm a boy and my sister's a girl, and that influenced the behavior of my
yeah.
parents towards us, and especially with my dad. So my dad, he could really get mad and angry, and but with me, I always felt that he had good reason to do so, and it felt like, okay, that's just. It's fair. It's just. I know why I'm getting this. Yeah, but I had to have to learn that, maybe that's just the story he was trying to convey and tell me, that it was just, even though it wasn't. At many times it wasn't. But that's something we've worked through. My sister not so well. So she had really a lot of psychological and health issues, especially after the breakdown of our family, and later on as well. And I've came to realize that I've had much less traumatic experience in my childhood than my sister had.
Mm.
Many things I did not know of till recently, where she, out of the blue began to tell me things, and I was like, oh shit,
Yeah, that's
I
tough.
did not want to hear that. So yeah, that's that. But
But
then with the
I
and
want to.
then
Okay, go ahead, please.
I just want to finish with the kids. So we had our daughter, and that was at the same time where I began with a new job. I had finished my PhD at university, so I was like, really, okay, push forward, go forward. What's the next thing? And then out of the blue came this surgery, and it threw me totally out of the loop. It was a terrible experience, and I had to work through that. And then in 2019, not just it was very stressful at the job, I still had health issues, but my wife and I were also very much struggling actually with the question: do we want to have a third child? And we really literally we were wrestling about that question.
Can you expand what were the philosophical question in here? Like what it sounds quite. I don't know. I don't see a question here. So I'm just wanted to.
We had two healthy children, and we had buried a child before,
Mm,
so we did not want to push our luck.
I get
We
it.
were in our mid to late 30s by then already. We know how biology plays out at that point, especially for women. Even though medical progress has given many possibilities and opportunities today, but that's not something we wanted to push. It was more like, okay, are we ready for it? Really psychologically, because we've had experiences of loss, and we've had experiences of joy, and is our cup full with regards to experiences like that?
Hmm.
And do we want to risk having another traumatizing experience? And we were not really totally convinced about it, but we said, okay, we trust God in this, and He gave us this vision after the loss of our first child, that we could have as many children as we wanted. And the funny thing is, I had a vision or dream. I don't know how you could describe it, but directly after the death of our first child, I had a dream, a vision about two kids, and the first one was a son, and the second one was a girl, and both had a name, and the names were already the names that we gave them later on. So that was years before we had the second and third child, which is really an interesting experience.
Hmm.
So we tried, and we said, okay, we want to have another child, but we were also quite wary that there are risks associated with that.
Yeah.
It's not a naive decision you do after all those stories in the past. That's not just okay, we want to have children, everything's fine. No. So we did, but as things turn out, my wife became pregnant with twins, and that was traumatizing because we were totally unprepared for the idea of having two babies in the household with already two kids and full-time job and all that kind of stuff. So that came a total shock to both of us. But within 3 weeks, that shock had resolved itself because the doctor realized that the hearts of the children stopped beating. So my wife had to go through surgery once again. Now that was really tough, and at that point she said, "No, I'm done. It's over. Never again. We're through with this kid story. That's the deal." And I said, "I'm going to. You've had by then 3, 4 pregnancies with 2 children.
Yeah.
I support every decision of yours. If you say you want to have another child, we'll try. If you say it's over to me as well.
Mm-hmm.
I completely trust you in that." And she said it's over. And 6 weeks later, she said, "I can't finish the story like that. Not like this." So we wanted to have another child. And then we did. And our son, he's 1.5 years old now, our youngest one. And so back to the meaning crisis and the anxiety.
Yeah, the comparison between the two. Mm-hmm.
Part of this anxiety came from the wrestling with the question: do we want to have another child? And part of the anxiety also came from the realization that once again we were in a situation of suffering. We suffered the loss of a first child, then we had a how do you call it in English? It's not an abortion, but it's like, okay,
A miscarriage.
Miscarriage. That's it. Right. So we had a miscarriage. So my wife went through 5 pregnancies with 6 children, and we have 3 kids today. That's a lot to
tough.
bear already. So we're not naive about that.
Yeah, it's almost the same statistics as in 19th century. Yeah.
Yes, indeed. And at the beginning of 2020, I also had severe health issues, and it turned out that they really had a cause, and that cause could be solved medically, but the doctors didn't realize at that point. So I had like a dead tooth, and that dead tooth was like causing trouble in my whole body. The whole system was like really in trouble. And I went to a sauna, and I had a collapse because I had an infection in my body, and it circulated, and the heat, it just was like panic attack, breakdown in a sauna, and then realization, oh, we have to get rid of that tooth. And so as soon as they got rid of that tooth and I was on antibiotics, all of my anxiety sensations, they just went away. I had no pulse, and I had no high blood pressure any longer. So there was a cause to that. But still, it felt to me like, okay, this is a story. This is a lesson I have to learn. Something is deeper. There's something behind it that I have to, find and work through. And so I kind of got to Jordan Peterson, and I got to his 12 Rules for Life, and I started reading through that. And even though I've had lots of experiences of suffering and turmoil in my life, I never took it, as Jordan Peterson said, that, suffering is inevitable. I was basically the small child sulking about the fact that, oh, why am I experiencing this? Poor me, poor little me. And when is someone going to, do something good for me?
Yeah. Look at all the rest, how happy they
Look
are.
at all, exactly.
Why I am so
Exactly.
suffering?
And Peterson was like, he was grabbing me and was like, give me this, and said, wake up, take up responsibility. Don't be such a wuss. And I was like, okay,
not the only one who suffers. And suffering is uncomparable. Maybe that's one of the things.
It is. And I've had to realize that it's not, And maybe that's the evangelical upbringing. It's like basically we all participate in the glory of Christ. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Everything is like glorious and
Yeah.
beautiful, and but there's also the part that we have to take up the cross literally, and it is painful and it is suffering. And that is part of the same, that's, the other side of the coin. And I was totally ignorant of that side until I read Jordan Peterson. But Jordan Peterson was nothing that I've continued reading, or not very much at least. I do enjoy from time to time his podcast, but the trajectory he's taking the last years already made me keenly aware that that was not something I was, really trying to invest myself much more into. So basically, I just read the 12 Rules for Life book. That was it. And then I was like on the lookout for a Christian interpretation of Jordan Peterson. Because I've always been a Christian, and I've wanted to have this add-on, this perspective. And so very quickly I found Paul van der Klee. And Paul van der Klee is like, if not your father, then at least your grandfather you wish you had.
Yes. Yeah.
So he has this, very sympathetic and open persona, and
one of
he's
his
very
biggest
open about himself.
Traits is the fact that he so little in neuroticism.
Yeah,
like almost
that's
zero.
awesome.
And that fact, like he don't care if he don't need if he's not speaking, so he can like be in a room. Like it's so weird to be with him in a stream with other people. He just sit there and listen. Like he's the most brilliant person in this group, but he don't have no need to say something, to be in the spotlight, and especially the role that he get when he's having random conversations. So
Yeah.
like really holding back and chill up, and it's a really affirming. It's really grounding. Yeah. It's something that Jordan Peterson kind of lacks, but. Yeah, that's interesting. I was yesterday we finished our book club reading of Dostoevsky, Crime and Punishment, half a year of grueling work, and one of maybe the conclusion that I got through this exploration, and we talked about it quite a lot, that I think the Orthodoxy, and specifically the Russians, through the art, through the unfolding of the history that they live through, and through the geography that they part of, they managed to explore this concept of suffering and transcending of suffering much more deeply than the Protestant and the Catholics in the West. And I think maybe sometimes they're pushing it to extreme and to this perverse element of sadomasochism, but still the exploration of what it is of suffering is parallel to what the West really developed, is the concept of hell. So they much more for exploring these ideas. And part of our conclusion, and I think that's also I think that's why Jordan Peterson is so gravitating towards the Russians, because of this exploration of suffering. And I do think there's certain, like the kids were separated. Each one of them went to his own side and explored these themes, deep things in Christianity, make some conclusions, and now we need to come together again and share what we learned. something like that. And that's what we
I think the attraction of Russian literature and philosophy to Jordan Peterson in part also stems from the inherent apocalyptic view of much and many of the philosophical and literary outputs from Russia, I think. I think part of it is that, okay, we're always at the brink of destruction, but maybe it's good so. Maybe we want to push it to destruction because then something good can come out of it. And that's a totally non-Western perspective because we always want to get, we want to try the best technical and political solution to any, risk that could come up. So that plays back to the question, how would we deal with death? Not 100 years ago, it was usual for most Catholics to actually, have the dead people of their family in their living room for at least, some days of remembrance and veneration. And then, there was the memorial service and the burial. But we've so become accustomed to actually get the dead out of the city, literally out of the city. In Germany, many old cities, they have their cemetery in the center, or at least somewhere around the center. But there's tendencies that, the communities, they have now cemeteries in the forest, like 10, 20, 30 kilometers away from the center. So you have tree burials, which is a very pantheistic notion, actually. It's like, okay, people without any religious background, they decide to be buried underneath a tree in the forest without any religious symbolism.
No,
And it's
but
not
being
just it's
buried.
not just that it's getting back into nature. It's also, you push out the dead out of your, visible space. You don't see them any longer. It's like, okay, you don't want to be confronted with death. And one good thing that the pandemic had is that Western society has had to confront itself with death in numbers that were not there for like decades, at least for Western Europe, where we don't have wars. I mean, to the Americans, they still have, the wars from Vietnam onwards, or even from Korea onwards. They have a memory of dead people. In Europe, since World War II, we didn't have such experience.
Yeah.
And that was the first time now with the pandemic that it really hit us.
Yeah.
And you realize the society is so utterly afraid of death, that it almost forgets living. It's like a paradox. You have to look death in the eye to be able to live fully. And with all the lockdowns and political decisions, and I'm not trying to, do a political statement here, and that's not it. But what I came to observe is that with all these lockdowns and masking and vaccination, all that kind of stuff, it's technologies being applied to solve the problem of how to confront death without confronting death. Because we don't want to see death, even when it's directly in front of us. And that was part of my solving of my meaning crisis. Is like, I have to accept death as not just with my child, but with my own, panic attack, where I realized, okay, I am going to die.
Yeah.
And just accept this, not run against it, not, try to hide it, but actually implement it and integrate it into your life, into your perspective. And from then on, you can actually really be open towards life in all of its colors and fullness. And that was the main change that took place within me. And the funny thing is, I read Jordan Peterson, and then I started jogging, I started weightlifting. I took a lot more care about sleeping habits, that kind of stuff. Just the small things. But within 1 year, my wife just once said, "You know what? It's really interesting. You really changed, and you changed for the better." And at that point, I was like, okay, wow, what is going on here?
Yeah.
What is this Peterson thing? What is this effect? And to this day, I'm still trying to, answer that question, because I've been praying before that. I've been praying after that. I've had my, biblical lessons and lectures and all that kind of stuff. But none of these had the effect that Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules for Life had on my life, even though I was already a Christian. So it was not that I had this, materialist, postmodernist, whatever you want to call it, meaning crisis. That was not my crisis, but still I had a meaning crisis. And Jordan Peterson played a huge part in solving that meaning crisis. And I have no idea why that is to this day.
Yeah.
I'm very thankful that it was, but I still look for an answer to that question.
Yeah, wow. There's so much things I want to go back maybe and have a conversation. But yeah, it's funny because for me it was a little bit the opposite. I started the physical change when I discovered Joe Rogan. And the Joe Rogan was a really, especially at the beginning, it was much more. It was much more personal because most of the people who coming to his podcast were his friends. So now they are famous comedians, but initially it was his friends, and he was the only famous established comedian. So he was coaching them every single week, like trying to give them this advice. So he for me was this role of the big brother who sent me to do difficult stuff. So I done like the Israeli trout, which is 1,000 kilometers from south to north. Like I climbed Zugspitz in Germany.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it was accidentally. It was an interesting experience. And I studied for university, went to study philosophy. Really tried to figure out all the earthly things. Cleaned my diet, start working out, and all those elements. Really invested in sports, but I still consumed too much drugs. I still had bad habits with drinking. I still had bad neuroticism about the past. Not no ability to hold a job for a long time, or my study was struggling. But so Joe Rogan was for me the physical transformation, and the spiritual transformation came later when I discovered Jordan Peterson. And also Jordan Peterson didn't done it initially. It was mostly start happening with Peugeot and his symbolism and his ideas as look at the symbols that surround you. So, and that question was a key question in my transformation. He said, look at the symbolism that you grew up with. So I went back to my parents' house and started counting. I started counting how many crosses do I see? How many cathedrals do I see? How many Jewish religious themes do I see? And I found myself that I grew up in a Christian house. So what that it's in Israel? So what it's like a Russian secular and Russian communist secularism? It's still fully injected with Christian symbolism. And then I said, oh, they're like, I understand who I am. Like, okay, that's like, I'm a Christian. I grew up in a Christian house. So, and my world is Christian. So I'm a Christian. Which is weird, especially to say it as you grew up as a regular Israeli in Israel. But still.
So that's kind of the Tom Holland experience.
Yes. Yeah. I read him last year, and it just clicked to me. And not just clicked to me, it's also gave me this tool to see a certain division in Israeli politics, because we have like the left and we have the right. The left is to give things to the Palestinians, the right is to not to give them. And then I saw, like the left is usually more secular people who are more academically inclined, open to experience, more compassionate. Like they are just farther away from Judaism and more toward Christianity than the right, who are more like with kippas and more like traditional people. So the divide between...
Yeah, but I want to push back. I want to push back on you a little, because you said the left is more compassionate, and I want to actually say that the left has been successful in telling us the story that being left is compassionate. And Jonathan Peugeot, he had this. I don't know how does he describe it? This. It's not criminal compassionate. It's something like it, it's twisted. It can become twisted
Yeah.
very much. And I think the right should not be misunderstood at being non-compassionate.
No, I agree, but
I
it's placed just a little bit different in Israeli politics. I understand what you're saying because I quite keen about the left and right politics in the Western world, but it's just a little bit different in Israel because you still has this overall structure of religion over the country, which is a
yeah,
unique
yeah.
element from all other Western countries. But you still have the certain tendencies for this from the secular part of Israel, which is the more Christian part. I'm not saying that
Hmm.
the way that they approach compassion is a healthy one. Maybe not. Like, not at all. Most of Israelis nowadays, most of them, even on the left, admit that the Oslo Accords was probably a mistake, a big mistake.
Hmm.
And that was a move toward a certain compassion, towards autonomy. But it just gave me certain lenses to look at those elements, and see the Christianity within myself, kind of something along those lines. I just wanted to say that for you it was. You discovered Peterson, and you had this transformation of like a physical transformation, but not only that, like a seriousness about that. But I think it's Jordan Peterson only helped you with this problem of death and children. Like the old joke, the only thing inevitable is death and taxes. That's
That's true.
all the, I think it's old Roman phrase, but I will change it. The only thing inevitable is children and death. So maybe, but this two combination, and you talked really nicely about the segregation um, of death and people who are dying in cemeteries, but we do the same thing with children. Like, we segregate them from society. And I had a conversation 2 days ago, I think, with Aaron or Dennis, about the segregation of children that we have in the society. And like, I think the best place for young boys is in a construction site. That's the best place that they
Yeah,
can be.
yeah.
In
I
construction
see what you
sites,
mean.
of course, there should be a certain boundaries of safety and protection from the grown-ups, but they need to stand there for hours and look at the tractor, which is like big
But that
machine doing something with the
I
earth.
don't know. I don't know if you talk about that, but if you compare the US to Germany, Americans are shocked about the freedom that German parents give their kids. Just look at German playgrounds. There are possibilities there where Americans would say, oh, that is a risk of liability. That is, okay, someone gets hurt and who's responsible for that? And Germans just say, okay, go out there and do it. And, German kids from primary school on, they walk to school, they take the bus, they take their bikes. It's the regular thing. In America, it's something, almost unthinkable to not drop your children exactly in front of school
Mm-hmm.
and have it walk even just like 10 or 20 meters towards the school building.
Yeah.
So I think, this risk aversion is built much more into the American culture than into Western culture. It's as total,
Yeah.
and especially into European culture. Because as I experienced with families from different European countries, they usually are much more open to their children having their own bad experiences. Yeah, you're gonna get hurt. You're not going to die, usually. Yeah, something might happen, but it will solve. It's
Yeah.
not going to, it's not going to wreck the whole of your life.
Yeah. You got
So I
hurt?
think,
Good you got hurt. Is it hurt? Excellent. So you know what
yeah, and
not to
it's
do in the
and it's
future.
so funny. It's so funny because I was totally not risk averse as a child. I had stitches several times. Uh,
Broke
and
limbs.
my son hasn't had one until this day, and he's becoming 9 now. So he has not even cut himself yet,
You worried.
which was something I had by the yeah. It's kind of okay. That's weird. So come on, do something. Go out, have some action. But yesterday he actually said that he was with a friend and they started riding their bikes down what's it called? Some steps.
Hmm.
So there's memorial in our area, and there are a lot of stone steps. So they took the bike and rode down, and it was the first time he did that. And he
It's a...
came home and said, like, you know what, Dad, I did this. And I said, like, oh, that's awesome, go for it. uh,
Yep, yep,
we
yep.
we want our children to have these experiences, even if it hurts them. And
Yeah.
and we do take some risks. Of course, you have to hedge the risk in some, responsible manner, not to over push things, but I think it's really good to, have give them this space, which is not it's not arbitrary. And it's not this leftist, childish, infantilist, you can do everything you want and you become everything you want. That's nonsense. It is a confinement,
Hmm.
It's a place where you do something within those confinements, and that is freedom. Without borders, you don't experience freedom.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think you experience terror without borders. So
Yeah.
it's very important. It's very important to set borders and boundaries, but to be flexible about those borders and boundaries, given the situation and the experience that the child has to make by himself or herself. And that comes with experience with children. So, with the first child, you're very anxious. With the third child, it's like, okay, go for it.
Go hurt yourself. Yeah, and that's the difference between the being a firstborn and being like a younger kid or in the middle. Yeah, it's completely like your parents treat you differently, and it's influenced you quite differently. Yeah, that's a very interesting problem of how should we integrate children back into adult life, like how we take them. It's not like a take your kids to school once a year. No, you should take them often. They should be more with their, maybe not parents, but maybe some other members of their family or community at their work, seeing grown-ups fight. And it's actually will also diminish the bickery between the grown-ups, because when you're
Yeah,
fighting with your
yeah,
colleague and you have a 10-year-old standing there looking at you, you feel ashamed. You feel ashamed the
yes,
same way as
yes,
as you feel ashamed by looking at a beautiful woman because of your inadequacies. Uh, it's in the same manner, because this is
yeah.
a person who is absorbing the world, and it's like a true audience that judge you from the perspective of God, something like that. And 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 we should have more kids around us.
We should have, and I think it ties back into the issue of migration, at least in part. My experience is that in Germany, especially with families from, say, Turkish, Italian, Greek background, they are much more open and, easy about children being around and children being loud. And if you look at the Germans, we just a week ago we had a family dinner, and we with with 3 little kids and all the seniors of the family, like in their 80s. And my son, he just out of joy burst out screaming because he found something he could, attend to in the restaurant. And immediately there was this like, okay, motion of a few of the seniors, like, that's too loud. What's going
Hmm.
up? And said, we're going to leave. She was like really, she you could see that her aggression and the power in her body, like saying, okay, either he's going to shut up or we're going to leave right now because I'm not going to accept this. And everyone was like, okay, it's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. So it turned out it was fine, but she doesn't like that at all because she's a primary school teacher. She loves children. She's an awesome teacher there, and but yeah, we've experienced that a lot in Germany, especially in restaurants and public places. you're being sneered at if you have one child, but you're really in trouble when you have two or three or four or five
Yeah.
kids. That's when people look at you and think you're like antisocial. It's so weird. And when you go into a Greek restaurant or an Italian restaurant, the first thing that happens is the service people, they come, oh,
Yeah.
bambini, children, wonderful. And you wish that the Germans would learn that. But anyways, I've experienced that in a lot of our friends, families. We've been the first family with three kids, and then you have with two and three, and one even have five. So I don't know if it's a generational thing, or if it's just, sample selection bias of myself. But there's much more family building in people around like mid 30s, late 30s. They have at least two kids.
Mm-hmm.
That's and there's even the German saying by now. It's like two is the new one, three is the new two.
Okay,
With
interesting.
regards to children.
That's good.
So
That's
so
good.
I think that's
If there's a phrases about that, then it really shows that it's a cultural change. That's really good.
it's a slow change. I don't know whether it applies to all of Germany. I think there will be some regions where that definitely does not apply. And you have very low numbers of birth and low birth rate. And I don't know what Germany looks like in total. I think we're aging much faster
Yeah.
than we're having children. And that's something that seems, you can't turn back that clock. We have to,
At least not
realize that.
in one generation. It's something that happened when
Not in my generation, at least not.
not in
Yeah.
ours now. No.
And I think increasingly my generation is becoming very distrustful about the promises of the political system to take care of their rents and pensions in the next 30 to 40 years.
Yeah, so you go to the
I don't buy into that.
you go to the
So I have to take
traditional
care.
pension, and traditional pension is your
Yes,
kids.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, that element. Do you think it's mostly because you think it's mostly couples that are related to religion, or not necessarily?
No, not at all. Not at all. Not necessarily. I would split pretty much 50-50. Half of the families we know with children are non-religious, which is based they're not done, they're not atheists, they're just NONE.
Mm-hmm.
Nowhere in the spectrum. And the other half, they are really, really, very strongly religious in the sense of, uh, Catholic families or deeply evangelical families. So yeah, it's either the nuns or the really serious into church and religion business people. And yeah, but apart from that, I don't see much of a distinction.
Yeah, I get you. Stefan, it's so easy to speak with you. It's like it flows
Thank you.
so easily. I wanted to ask something related to the festival because I'm asking everybody
Yeah.
that we still don't know if those conversation going to be uploaded, not going to be uploaded, in what kind of format, what specifically. I don't know. I was speaking about it with Matthias, and of course you can say yes, say no, because there's a lot of personal stuff you
Yeah,
share
sure.
there. But the idea is, I want to ask, like, what do you want from this weird conference, festival, gathering, estuary that's going to happen?
That's a really good
What do you
question.
want to
As a
achieve?
caveat, I don't know 100% yet if I can attend at all, because on that Sunday we're celebrating the baptism of my youngest son. So that will take,
Bring them
preparation.
along.
That would be fun, but my wife is not fluent in English, and my kids, they would have some fun maybe, but I don't think that it's something they would attend to in the first
I
place.
think we need kids around there. I think it will be good. So you can sacrifice
Well,
your kids for
that ties
one
in.
evening.
Sacrifice children. That's what you said. Well, so I'm not 100% sure of this festival idea and concept yet,
Mm,
because what I've really grown into is these random happenstance conversations taking place on the BoM Discord server, where you just hop into the voice chat and as conversation gets going, and it's not anarchy, but it's not as structured as the estuary protocol. And the estuary protocol can feel very much structured, and there's a beginning, and then you say something, they say something, and then would you want to reply something to that point? Would you want to reply something to that point? Which is totally fine, but to me, I have difficulties getting into the conversation flow,
mm-hmm,
which we have by now, I think.
mm-hmm.
It's a wonderful conversation we have, and I think that's the spirit that I'm not sure it can develop by this protocol, or it does develop by this protocol, because there's so many issues and so many people around at the same time, possibly, that you have just these snippets. It's like intellectual fast food.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think the Estuary Festival. Yeah, the question is what we want to achieve with it. As a German, I don't think it will achieve very much for a German community. Maybe some people will come, but at this point it feels more like, okay, we get the European BOM community together, which is awesome and really nice to have. But for the BOM and for the idea, I don't know if you can say idea behind all of this, it is really, I think, more like Matthias is already doing with the local meetup, in presence, with just, a few people regularly meeting each other, getting to know each other, getting into a relationship with each other. And yes, you can experience a sort of relationship during a weekend, but a lot of, group effects go into that. And a festival, I mean, that's basically, if it's a festival, if you look at, the huge music festivals in Europe, crowd surfing, all those people, enjoying the same thing, that has a value in itself, but I'm not sure whether that is um, sustainable in the long run.
Yeah.
I think it's a one shot, and it can be a one shot transformative experience. But as Paul Vanderklay just wrote in the Substack, transformative moments are just that, moments.
The moments, yeah.
And after that, what comes after it? It's just everyday life
That's
again.
that's
And I want to draw. What I desire, what I yearn for is being able to find these small niches and the small islands in your everyday life that draw you into this enchanted reality. And that can be participation in church, and that can be participation very much in conversations like these. And so I'm more like inclined to say the real meat of, or the possibilities, the opportunities, they lie much more in the one-on-one or one and few interactions that develop out of the Discord, and not in a 100 people musical speakers festival over three
yes.
days.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, that's basically what I think about that.
yeah, that's basically was my point about Paul coming, and I don't want some just YouTube celebrity, and I prefer something with much more meat, and I think this meat brings John Van Dunk and the Azure Protocol. I agree with you completely, because I experienced something from the problem that you mentioned about the bridges of meaning. First of all, the voice chat and the conversation are very, very chaotic. I think it's
Yeah,
mainly because there's not enough women there. Because
yeah,
I've been in few conversations that Hatomi entering, and the conversation is just changing completely, and it's so much structure. Or Andrea coming to a conversation, and then everybody's like, okay, pants up, need to be correct in its place, and now we are going to
yeah,
speak like
yeah,
grown-ups. So there's one
yeah.
element. But the element of the person, so the estuary, as I see it, is the gateway for those relationships that we are building right now. So you have maybe a local estuary surround. You have a well-prepared topic that probably somebody has an idea about, which is probably Jordan Peterson and, I don't know, politically correctness or religious themes, and you can watch a video or two of Jordan Peterson, then discuss it quite easily in the estuary. So it's a very easy. It's kind of returning back to the original academy. You starting a group, and then you enter a certain discussion, and you're not bound by academic hierarchy, something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I agree with you, because I found it. I found that even Paul's conversation, the random conversation that he having, I heard not criticism, but people who've been on the conversation with him saying like, I feel cheated, because I went to this date with this beautiful girl, and that's it. It was one date. Like, I want more. I want a relationship. I want some meat behind that. And just one conversation with Paul is yes, it's better than non-conversation with Jordan Peterson, and that's what Paul tried to bring. You want to talk about Jordan Peterson? You can talk with me. I will be your Jordan Peterson. Excellent, but it's not a relationship. So I throw away this challenge to people who are going to the festival, and that's mainly what I'm trying to do, is to start a consistent conversation on a certain consistent basis, once 2 weeks, once a month, once every 2 months. But as long as because the truth is, I don't know you yet, and we're just getting to know each other. And the conversation that we're having, what the topics of the conversation is about, and we are very fluent, high intelligence people and really like ideas, but the ideas is the 20% of the conversation. Most of it is reacting to the laughter, reacting to some gesture, getting used to the cadence and rhythm of the speaker, the person you are reacting to. And you should do it like consistently over a period, because then this person become alive. And I started a few conversations with randos who felt cheated, and like we're doing once a week a 3-hour or 2-hour discussion. Doesn't matter about what, but as long as we are doing this. And I
think there's a place for this type of conversations, in that it doesn't have to be friendship, but it can become fellowship.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And that's something that's missing very much. This idea of people, even though they have not known each other for like a decade or so, still can get into a space where there's an openness, and where's the possibility to float around ideas and concepts, and talk about really, really pressing issues. And but these safe spaces depend on an intuitive knowing about how the other side moves in the conversation. It's like, okay, if you feel cheated because you danced once with a beautiful girl, do a dancing course. Take that dancing course for 12 weeks. Then you know how to dance and to move with that girl. And maybe out of that comes, a transformative experience, that at one point you're at the ball and you're on that stage and you start dancing and you lose everything, It doesn't matter. You're just there with her, and you move, and afterwards you think, what was that? We're in the total flow state. And, the flow state is something that I really, really like and enjoy. It's hard to get in there, but when you're in there, it's great. But that's not everyday experience, and it doesn't have to be.
Mm-hmm.
we shouldn't look out only for the spikes
Yeah, the
in our
highs.
endorphins, the heights. Now that's I'm not saying that everything has to be mediocre. You have to have these experiences from time to time, but you should not, focus too much on trying to achieve them with force and try to push them, because then they won't happen in the first place. So yeah, I really appreciate the style you take on here and the way you get in contact with the randos and start conversations on that basis, because I think that is actually probably much more
Impactful.
impactful, exactly, and sustainable
Hmm.
than the other venues and ideas.
But you didn't answer my question. What do you hope, you yourself hope, to get out of the festival? Like, why is it of interest to you?
The question that's I can't answer the question yet, because I don't know yet, and I don't even know yet whether I will attend. If I can attend, it will probably be only the Saturday,
Hmm.
and from that I thought, like, okay, well, maybe the best thing is, listen to Paul van der Klee and Burn Power. But then I thought, like, I have that on YouTube already. So what do I really want to get out of that? And then it was like, okay, you want to get one-on-one contact with people you've been already in contact before in the Discord. And then it's like, okay, well, you have that as well already. So what is the real benefit? Or I don't want to say benefit, because then it sounds like a,
Yeah.
transactional move. That's not what I want to convey here. But I'm still actually really struggling with the idea of what should come out of it for me to really be convinced that I have to go there. And I don't have that answer yet.
Mm.
And if that answer doesn't come, I probably won't attend, because truth be told, I don't have a meaning crisis in the sense that I need relationships. My life is full of relationships, and the most important relationship to me is the relationship I have to my wife, because we've been through, all the stories. We're still together. We're 20 years together now. In 2 weeks, we'll have 15th wedding anniversary.
Wow.
And I say that, before I'm turning 40. And I'm from a family that, experienced the divorce. So I know what I can be thankful about, and I know where I can turn to if I'm really in trouble. And my wife and I are the best friends as well, because we don't have, any secrets, none.
Hmm.
We're bare naked in front of each other,
Hmm.
in the literal and in the figurative sense. There's not one single spot we don't know about each other or we don't talk about each other. And this intimacy is so high in the hierarchy that every other relationship is just way below that.
Yeah.
And I think that is actually the way it should be. And so it's always kind of, do I get into this space where I can try to get into a relationship that is sustainable and, transformative for both members of that relationship in the long run? And I haven't had many of these relationship contacts yet on the Discord server. And that is in part because I'm not on the lookout for it. I really enjoy the intellectual game on the Discord.
Hmm.
And I enjoy the fun, these floating around these ideas and, just speaking out loudly and then, getting a pushback and, being, just very like a tree in the wind,
Hmm.
going this and that direction. But I have my roots already. I'm not searching for roots to grow in that sense.
Yeah.
And I'm not on the lookout for a transformative experience. I don't need that. I've had the most exhilarating transformative experiences with attending the birth of my children, and I've had the most off-putting experiences,
Well,
transformative as well, with children. So it's
let me
difficult for me to
suggest
answer that question.
let me suggest what you do can bring, because I understand that you're right now really occupied of developing this tree that you already planted and you have deep roots,
Yeah.
and you also have fruits on it. but and I think that's one of the things that you can contribute the most is to be an example. Like, here is a person who is maybe my age, but has completely different life trajectory and a healthy life trajectory with its difficulty and with its struggles, but you can be of a certain ideal. Because a lot of the people that at least I've spoke already is young people who are coming from very troublesome time, deep depressions, deep like misunderstanding their place in life, and this they found this community and they managed to like build something that is functionable a little bit, but it's very hard. You understand that the next step, you understand that, oh, maybe I should get married and a family and the later stage, but I don't want the festival. I don't use it anymore. I don't want our conference to be only very old people and very young people. I don't want just to be 20-year-olds
I see what.
and
Yeah, I
and
see. Yeah,
60-year-olds.
yeah.
I want the things in between. And actually, the kids, I'm more excited about this idea. I want kids as well. Of course, we don't know how to deal with that yet as a society, and even in our small corner of the internet. It's something that we'll need to play with, how we introduce more
Yeah, but
kids.
I think we're already on a way there because Matthias already also floated the idea that, we want to have a German local meetup, especially with the whole families, not just those members of the Discord server, but take your spouses and children together, do a hike, do some barbecue, whatever, get to know each other on that level as well. You really can make at that a small group connection there. And I think that is something that is really, that we should do, that we should push forward. I really appreciate this idea. So I'm not a guy who goes to these conferences in any way, because
Me
to
neither.
me
It's my
these
first one.
yeah, so yeah, I probably will attend the Saturday, but not Friday and Sunday. That's impossible for me. But I think that these conferences they are even though it's a small circle, it's still semi-anonymous because you can have only so much time with every single other one without actually either you have the time frame and the schedule, and the schedule is already pretty packed. So it's just like 45 minutes
Not
Q&A,
that
burn power,
much.
and PVK. And and then you think, okay, where do you get the interaction within the crowd? I'm not so much interested of the interaction between Vanderklay and Burn Power on stage, because you can experience that in the
Yeah.
conversations already. I'm really interested into the everyday girls and guys next to me. And this is what drove me to the random conversations and to the Discord. Is it's not just intellectuals, it's not just prominent figures of YouTube and whatever. It's really everyday people with their everyday problems and everyday history and background, trying to solve this riddle that is the existence of human life on Earth. And that is just so fascinating because we're so similar and yet always so different. And we all participate in that sense in the glory of Christ, because every one of us is just, this golden nugget within the whole, the big picture. It's like a mosaic, and every we are just, this little mosaic piece of the whole image of God. But without us, there would be a spot missing. And God is like saying, this is the big picture. But if there's this small spot that is you and it's missing, everyone sees that spot.
Yeah, don't be a
So
burned
you're
pixel.
important. Right,
Yeah,
right.
like be a pixel that doing his job and shining through. Yeah. Oh, that's such a bad analogy. I'm sorry. But
No, don't worry. Don't worry.
um, yeah. Well, I understand, and that's my worry as well about about this conference and those meetings. Um, I'm I do afraid that, like, I've been part of it only for half a year, probably very actively half a year. But I now I am afraid that it will disappear on me, and I will
Mm.
leave hanging and Chad the alcoholic is usually said like, oh, sometimes I'm quitting out of Discord, but then I like what I'm doing, like I need it. I need to came back and I'm returning after a few days. I don't have the need to quit it, because I'm not that active. I usually use it as a resource, as a list of people, and I see what people post, and then I reach out to a certain person and have like pull him to whatever locally I'm doing. If it's the book club, which is a very small play things, if it's a random conversation, which also not that many. Now I'm more active around this festival things, but also I'm trying to be to turn it to a very personal element. But I'm still afraid that it will be gone, and I will.
And you mean after the conference?
I don't know. Sometime.
Yeah,
Like I'll be
yeah.
afraid that the it you don't it won't be of any use to you, and you won't be there. And I will be with myself with in the same position, familyless, without roots, without a strong connection in the physical world, and I will like return to this alone stage. And for me,
Mm.
that's
Mm.
I'm most of my friends is not from Discord, but although I understand there is a many people that it is the fact. And for me,
Okay.
I do have a lot of friends outside of it, and my intellectual friends, a lot of them outside of the Discord, and so I do have relationship with the world, but it's kind of giving me an idea what I should be, what my purpose in life, and what should my career be like. Something like that. The Discord giving it a certain, like, a playground which I didn't feel that existed in the real world for me.
Right. It's a playground, and it has some great chances, but it has some risks as well. You can get hurt on a
Yeah,
playground. You
but
can have wonderful, transformative, heroic experiences on a playground. That's part of the play, and in that kind, I'm very open to this idea of play as such. It's not for pure entertainment.
mhm.
It's more like Paul. It's more like John Vervaeke spoke of in his Cambridge talk. You have this, augmentation of reality. When you take a stick and you impersonate Zorro, it's not that it's not virtual. You do act it out, but at the same time, you know that you're not Zorro. But it can become this kind of transformative experience to transcend yourself or to develop yourself. The question is, why do we need to develop ourselves? It's such a modern idea. It's
No,
such this
in
this idea of it's
relationship to
such this
other.
idea of writing. Okay, right, in relationship to
Yeah,
others. Yes.
it's not. I'm not. Most of what the biggest change that happened to me, I stopped to be such a big narcissist. I'm
Hmm.
still looking at myself when I'm speaking with you. With you, like I cannot do. Like it's hard for me not to. Like I try to imitate certain things. I tend to react. I try to play with the image, and so I understand there's a certain narcissism. But like for example, I understand that I'm approaching my 40s, and the window of family is closing, and it's really difficult. So I do try to find validation in being part of this world. So part one of the things that I try to develop is, first of all, be able to be a cool uncle, a cool grown up for kids, and then to be that kind of figure for a developing figure for the kids of my friends. Like, because if they're having kids and they didn't miss this train, and Israeli are actually quite full of kids, I can be that. And it's fulfilling, maybe not on the same degree as having your kids, but at least you don't growing up alone and you are useful. You absorbing information from the old generation that I'm having conversation with, transferring it in some good perspective, and releasing it back to those unformed potentialities that we called kids.
Well, I think that's actually pretty useful. This thinking that you're part of an intergenerational chain.
Mm-hmm.
No matter whether you actually have children yourself, but you're always part of the whole of society and the generations involved in society. And I think that's a lot of wisdom there already. Because the risk today is that you see yourself only as you're in your age group, you're in your generation, the generation before you, the generation after you. But this interconnectedness is part of the solution to the meaning crisis.
Mm-hmm.
We're not islands. Yeah, we're part of a bigger story, and that bigger story begins, right in front of our door. The
But
neighborhood.
that's exactly
That's the
why
first thing.
your age group in your condition is such an important piece to the bridges of meaning. Your position is
Uh,
like you're in this middle position, which is, first of all, your time is so much more precious than a 20-year-old or a 60-year-old, because the one is in its pension and the other is in his university. Your time is so precious because you need
yeah,
to
you could say
spend
that,
it
definitely.
on making sure there's an infant staying alive, and that's a really, really high priority. So you are I don't want to say it, but I will say it. You are as a valuable commodity to the society and the bridges of meaning specifically. Something like that. Did you get that, or it was a cut in the stream? Stefan, I I
I appreciate that very much. It's never come to my mind to. No, I did get this. I did get it acoustically. Just visually, we had some
Oh,
breakdown.
okay. Stefan,
So
please go
I
ahead.
can hear you perfectly. It's just that the video. Yeah. So I never thought of myself as being in this position of you know as you said commodity. Um, I'm actually very much still on the lookout about what can I bring into this community.
Mm-hmm.
And if that is part of what I can bring into it, I'm very happy to do so. But I'm not keen on pushing my experience on others. I think I want to get into relations and into conversations where people by themselves realize that they can, ask me a question and it is maybe helpful to them. I'm grateful if that is the case, but I don't feel like I'm in the right place to, be like this kind of mid-age, settled, rooted evangelist of a certain life model or experience because I'm not to judge and I don't want to feel others. I don't want others to feel judged by me just sharing my experience. So I'm happy to share my experience if people ask for it,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't want to push it onto them. I don't know if that makes sense to you.
It sounds like a very good pastor, a very good a father in the church. If you want, he will be there and guide you with the steps toward God and in the church, but he's not pushing his agenda on you. And I think it's a noble
Right,
role to
right. And
take.
especially given the trajectory that my life has taken the last years, the fact that we have a conversation right now and we have that conversation about certain issues and topics right now was unthinkable for me 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And I know that, time is precious and time goes very fast. So a lot will happen. I mean, the last 2 years has happened so much for the whole world, for all of society, and for us in our small individual lives, that these transformations are just beginning to play themselves out in the long run. It's just the start of, really great shifts and developments. But at the same time, having children, it's always this both being in the moment right here and right now, and thinking about the kids growing up so fast and becoming adults, and engaging with them and wanting to become not a friend, but a fellow to the children, past their themselves becoming adults. So yeah, it's being right here and looking forward at the same time, and cherishing the past, but not idolizing it or romanticizing it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Stefan, I think we had like a really good conversation.
Oh, indeed, absolutely.
Yeah.